Hi, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayegh, and on this podcast, we're going to talk about some deep stuff. I'm here to tell you that you're amazing, and often, the only person who can't see that is you. No matter who you are, what you do, or where you're from, there's greatness in you. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayegh, and welcome to the Transformation Starts Today podcast, where I interview leaders, champions, and high performers from all walks of life as they share their story, the lessons they've learned along the way, and empowering perspectives to help you create an extraordinary life without regret, starting today. Today we have with us Adel Sayegh. Adel Sayegh is a resilient entrepreneur, Marine Corps veteran, and pancreatic cancer survivor who built a billion-dollar company from his garage. His journey is one of overcoming adversity, staying anchored in faith, and using every challenge as a platform to serve others. Guided by a deep love for God and a passion for impact, Adel now devotes his life to inspiring the next generation of leaders and reminding them they were created for greatness. Adel, such an honor to have you on the show. And thank you for being here.
Oh my God, I love you. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time.
Yeah, so for our listeners, in case you caught the last name, sounds a little similar. Adele is my cousin, and we got to meet for the first time about 4 to 5 years ago, and it's been such a incredibly beautiful relationship that's been built. And I've been excited to have you on the show for a while, and I'm so excited to share your wisdom, your life experience with our audience.
I love you, man. I'm so looking forward to today.
Thank you. I love you too. And so your story is so inspiring. I've heard it before. I'm excited for our listeners to hear it. So for our listeners who don't know you yet, they haven't heard your story, can you please share with us who you are, what led you to where you are today, and what inspired you to do what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'll begin back probably where I was born. I was born in Jordan, where your dad was also born. So by age 9, I had gone through 3 distinct wars, including the 1967 war. And I would say, most kids don't have recollection when they're age 2, but it's amazing how profound of vivid imagination and vivid recollection you have when the bombs are dropping right next to your home, roofs are caving, windows are shattering. And so that's what I remember as a little kid. But by age 5, I knew it was different than most other kids when they were when they were listening to radios and listening to music. I was a kid that always was curious. I had to open the radio up and understand how that radio works. So I've always knew that there was something different about me. And just throughout my entire life, I've always been very innovative, very creative. Um, I joined the Marine Corps at age 17. I graduated a year early with 3 scholarships to go full ride anywhere I wanted. And of course, I chose to serve my country. At that time, I thought, what greater honor um, to show a country that gave my family and myself the greatest opportunity than to put my life on the line. And the Marine Corps was the way I wanted to go. So that was probably one of the best decisions I made early on. And I can tell you that right after graduating, I joined the Marine Corps, not to gain a career out of it, but to really, I wanted to put my life on the line. So I joined a unit called ANGLCO, Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. And we were modern day, we were training with the SEALs before most people knew who the SEALs were. We trained on Army, Air Force, and naval bases just as much as we did on Marine Corps bases. And so during wartime, we would be the unit that would be deployed, drop behind enemy lines, and based on us assessing the enemy situation, we would either call in airstrikes from the Air Force, gunfire from the Navy, or artillery from the Army. So it was a really unique unit within the Marine Corps. And at graduation, Doc, this is what they said to us: congratulations, Marines, your life expectancy is 37 minutes. And I remember tapping my buddy and said, what the bleep did he just, what do you mean 37 minutes? And I realized then, how technology worked. And the minute you called, you used your intercom, you had an entire battalion, enemy battalion, using your signal, triangulating on it, and then bombing you. So in the training exercise, they just throw smoke grenades to say, I got you. Well, I went to a Radio Shack and I got what I call primitive form of repeaters. And I would take, cable as far as I could take it, quarter of a mile, half a mile, whatever that was. And I would run it. And then all I was doing is repeating the signal and I was replicating it as far as I could go. And sometimes it would be as far as a quarter of a mile, and we'd be calling in airstrikes or gunfire. They'd be dropping the smoke grenades in one section, and I'd be under a tree sipping a bourbon or enjoying myself as a Marine. And until I got a tap on the shoulder and it says, "Hey, come here, Marine. Tell me about this really cool technology." And the rest was really history. I left the Marine Corps to start my company from the garage. My wife and I took it from literally our garage into $1 billion conglomerate. Most of your audience will probably know of me, but don't know me personally. If you've ever gone shopping, you've seen the security tags on clothing. We own hundreds of patents on that technology, facial recognition, GPS tracking, similar to the ring technology. So that was kind of where God blessed me. And at 49, I'm training for Ironman in the best shape of my life, better shape than I was in the Marine Corps at 18, financially more blessed than I ever thought possible. Here's a kid from Jordan, one of 10, that grew up in a one-room house, not a one-bedroom house, but a one-room house. And here I'm blessed beyond measure. I got a knock on the door. When I opened it, says, Adele, I don't care how much patent you have. I don't care what you invented. And I really don't care how much money you have. I'm pancreatic cancer. And everything that could possibly have gone wrong went wrong, doc. Surgery after surgery, failure after failure, to the point where I was given my last rites on 3 separate occasions. And what I say is, man and science gave up on me on 3 separate times, but God never did. And my defining moment was when the doctors walked in. I was surrounded by my wife and my 4 kids. And he looked at him and said, I am so sorry, but it's time to call your family and your priests. Your dad, your husband's not going to make it through the night. And he stormed out of there. And you could just imagine the tension in the room, the disappointment, the letdown. Up until that moment, every single one of us, including myself, thought I was going to be able to make the turn. 56 days continuous, every one of my organs was failing. And I remember my wife was just devastated, crying hysterically. All my 4 kids, teenagers at the time, I remember they were just jumping up and down, pleading with God. And I just, for the first time in my life, I had inner peace. I remember I just closed my eyes for just a brief second. And I said, God, just please give me one more chance to get this one right. And I felt the presence of God in ways I've never experienced in my life. I looked at my kids. I looked at my wife. I said, look at me. I'm not going anywhere. And my baby girl goes, Daddy, how do you know? I said, sweetheart, Jesus said, my faith will heal me. And Dr. Jamil, I believe that with every fiber of my being, so much so that all my vitals started improving right before our eyes. The monitor that was monitoring me, my blood pressure, my heart rate, everything started improving. And by morning, they ran every test imaginable, every CAT scan, MRI, labs, name it. And the doctors walked in the morning and looked at me and says, Mr. Sage, I don't know how to explain this. And I said, I do. And and that was the beginning of the greatest journey of my life.
There's so much magic in what you just shared. And thank you for that. And for anyone who's privileged enough right now to be watching us on video, and I share this because I felt this from day one of meeting you, but in your presence and what you share, that you radiate a beauty and a love and a light that is so palpable. And just in audio, I'm sure you can feel it, but video, it's obvious. So that's the
Yeah.
thing. So a few things for our audience based on some things that came up to me while you were sharing. The first one you mentioned being a kid and being interested in certain things stood out to you.
Yeah.
And so for our audience to play with, What are the things that capture your attention? What are the things that seem to fascinate you? The things that come easy, whether it's to you, whether it's to your kids, both. And are you listening? Are you honoring that? Some people that for whatever the reasons, like that innate skill set, you can practice it, yeah, but it comes easier. You're able to just do it faster. It seems to just resonate with you. You want to put more time into it. And
Yeah.
very often we don't actually honor that calling because we've got some type of story. Either can't make a living doing that, can't make money doing that, or we have to live up to some standard that our family or culture or society or whatever is holding us to, so we can't put ourselves in the other thing. But the thing is, I come from that space of, whatever we want to call it, God, source, universe, it is putting on your heart the dream and the ability to fulfill that dream. And so if something calls to you and you ignore it, when something comes so easy and it fascinates you and it grabs your attention and you're like, I'd love spending my free time doing that, you could likely make the same amount or more money as you were making whatever you were doing that you didn't love. And now there's a level of joy and enthusiasm that you'd be bringing into every moment of it, which makes you even better at it.
Absolutely.
And so that's the first thing. Second thing is that story of what you experienced in the hospital. I remember a mentor of mine talked about how a doctor gave him a prognosis, and it was a prognosis that he was going to die in a brief period of time. And he got a second opinion, a fifth opinion, and it turned out that he survived and he's been alive for decades. And he said, my doctor was sincere, but he was sincerely wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's coming from the space of, yes, you can have faith in and trust your healthcare practitioners, and at the same time, you can recognize, where are they giving me the death sentence, which is actually just based on their experience and based on statistics, but that doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with their educated guess of what they think is going to happen. And with a nocebo placebo effect, I've shared it in the past, but it's been several episodes. If you're not familiar as our audience, you have the placebo effect. To keep it simple, you think something beneficial is going to happen, it's more likely to happen. And somebody might give you something, it could be just thought, or it could be that placebo pill, a sugar pill, saline solution, whatever it might be. And there's studies on that where farm companies will spend hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes to try to figure out how can they outdo the placebo, because the placebo is 20 to 80% as effective as the real drug. And they've done placebo surgeries where the person had open knee surgery because they needed a knee replacement, they were told. One group got the replacement, the other group just got cut open and then closed in the middle of the scar. And they told the second group, oh, yeah, you got the full surgery. And because they had the scar, they believed it. A year later, they have just as good outcomes.
Yeah.
And so that's the placebo. But the nocebo is the placebo in the negative form. And this is where you say something negative is going to happen, something that you call bad is going to happen. And because you fully accept it, it's more likely to happen. And so with people, let's say in hospitals, when they get told they have X amount of time to live, if they believe it, they usually die around that time frame. And so where are you either speaking over to somebody else, you're speaking over somebody else's life with something that is potentially negative, discouraging, disempowering, or where are you accepting that in your own life? And you, with all the love that I'm sure you had for your practitioners, you trusted and had your faith in God, and you came from that space, and that created a result that was just so beautiful. And then the last thing is this idea that, like you said, you were on top of the world, all the money you'd ever want, your life was going so beautifully. And then you had this experience, and it seemingly could feel like everything was taken away in a brief moment. And it's asking our audience to play with the question, how much time do you have left? And the answer is the same for all of us. I don't know. And because that's the answer, whatever you're doing right now, is that worth whatever remaining time you have left, given that you don't know how much time you have left? And very often we're just not intentional about it. We're not deliberate. So we do things that in the long term, we look back and we go, if I knew I only had X amount of weeks, months, years, decades, whatever it might have been left, I wouldn't have spent my time doing that. I wouldn't have held that grudge that I held on to for as long as I did. I wouldn't have put myself in certain situations, whatever it might be. And so when you play with that question, is this worth it? If this was the last like week of my life, is that how I would show up for this? Is that how I would be with this person that I claim to love, but I was just being really nasty to? Whatever it might be. There's a Steve Jobs quote that I'll close on. He said, if you wake up every day living as if it's your last, one day you will surely be right.
Yep.
And so it's coming from that space of, if today was my last day, emotionally, mentally, how would I show up? Would I savor that sunset, that sunrise, that food, that embrace with a loved one? Or would I rush it? Would I try to just get to the other side because I'm chasing something, success or whatever that might be for, for the individual? And your story, I think, is so inspiring as this wake up call that here you said, God, just give me that one more chance. And then you got it. And then the question becomes, what am I doing with it? And
Yep.
every single one of us, in my own, let's say, assertion here to try on, every moment is a second chance. Every moment, the moment you're aware, I don't like the way I just showed up right there.
Yep.
Every moment you say, the way my life has been going up until this point, this isn't me. Something's not right. Like I want to change. Now you're aware of it. Now you can change. And that might be scary. It might not feel comfortable, but you can do it and you're not alone. And when you allow yourself to do that, you step into the most beautiful life that you don't even know is available for you right now.
Well said, Doc. Well said. A lot of questions, a lot of insight. I don't even know where to begin. But I took some notes here on some of the questions you asked, and you talk about the power of mind and the placebo effect. In the Bible, and I'm going to talk about my faith if it's okay, because
Please.
this is the reason why I'm here, right? The Bible talks about having the faith of a mustard seed that could move mountains. And I remember my dad, as a little kid, would ask me these questions, and he was like, Baba, Daddy, do you believe in heaven? Or he would say, do you believe in Jesus? And I said, yeah, Daddy, of course I believe in heaven. And he would look at me and straight in the eye and goes, if you believe in heaven, but you're not investing in it, you know what they call you? I was like, no, Dad, what do they call me? Because they call you a schmuck. Heaven is one of those things you either believe in or you don't. There is no in between. And if you truly believe in heaven and in the afterlife, and you're not investing in it, my dad was right. I would be a schmuck if I was not living my life with that level of passion, with that level of living today as my last. But see, if I try to live today as my last day, it's unsustainable. It's because there's so many things I would want to do if I knew today was my last day. And that's why a lot of people begin with that thought. And it's no longer sustainable because you can't live every day that way.
Yeah.
But here's how I live my day. I live my day based knowing that God gave me a second chance to get it right this time. So I live the simplest life of anyone you've probably ever met. And every night when I put my head on the pillow, I simply ask this question, says, God, were you proud of me today? See, on the nights that God is proud of me, if I was to take all the joy, all the peace, all the happiness, all the success I've ever experienced in my life, and you bundle it all up together, it pales in comparison to the amazing, incredible feeling that you feel when God is truly proud of you. There is no greater feeling in the world. And I always say, if you were to experience that at night, as you put your head on the pillow, how do you think you would sleep?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to sleep like that, how do you think you're going to wake up? What kind of level of energy? What kind of level of excitement? What kind of level of let's go? What kind of level of attitude would you have that day? And on the days that he is not proud of me, he's not proud of me always. He's like, Adele, here's an opportunity I presented you earlier today. When this guy cut you off, and let me show you how you reacted when the window came down and the international symbol of love came out. And let me just show you what you said and how you were robbed of peace, of joy, of happiness. And it didn't last just a minute or two. It lasted for quite a long time that you were robbed of this. And oh, by the ways, he was on his way to his only daughter's car accident where they just pronounced her dead. See, when I see things in every situation that God has presented to me. Now I'm no longer seeing that situation from my perspective. I'm seeing it from God's perspective. And when I ever find myself in that situation, now I'll no longer go into getting upset or getting angry. How dare he? I get into the prayer, says, God, please get him home, get him to where he wants to go safely. Because I have no idea what he's enduring, what he's going through, what trauma he may be experiencing, or that rude cashier or that rude waitress or waiter that's having a really bad day. And how many times would we have a waiter or waitress get an order wrong, or just we felt like they had an attitude and we want to tell them off, or how bad the order was, or sometimes call their manager and God says, Adel, that's the opportunity I presented you. Let me show you how you reacted. Let me show you how you hurt the feeling. Let me show you what you told them. And oh, by the ways, they're planning to go home and commit suicide that night because they've been betrayed by every man and woman before you. So I'm no longer getting to that state where I find someone that is having a really bad day and it affects me. I look at them and I'm like, I want to put a smile on their face. I want to bring joy into their heart. I want to bring joy into their life because I have no idea what they're going through. I have no idea what they're enduring. Yeah. I have no idea what, if someone is sick in their house, if they've just been betrayed, if they're just hurting. I don't want to add more to that. I want to bring them joy and love and happiness. And sometimes God presents me with opportunities, says, Adel, here's your spouse. Well, Marlene was just having a really bad day that day. And let me show you how you reacted. When in that moment in time, she really needed a husband. She really needed a friend. She needed someone to understand her, someone to just, maybe not even say nothing, just hold on to her. Just let her know how precious she is to you. So all of a sudden now, every circumstance, every situation, I look at from Christ's eyes. Yeah. And when I do that, I'm no longer in a depressed state. I'm no longer anxious state. I'm no longer angry state. I'm no longer overwhelmed state. And I used to feel all those things in the past, regardless of how much money or how much success or how much toys I had. I was robbed of joy. I was robbed of peace. I was robbed of happiness. I was robbed of fulfillment because I didn't know how to control my emotions in that moment in time. And, you know, what's funny is you talk about placebo. Here's statistics, and this is not a placebo. This is facts. Every university, or virtually every university that I know of, from, UCs on the West Coast, UCLA, USC, to Ivy Leagues, Harvard and Yale, and everything in between, have conducted studies that shows that it is absolutely impossible for you, for your listeners, for me, or anyone you know, to be angry, to be depressed, to be overwhelmed, to be in a place of fear, and be grateful at the same time. It can't be done. It's been proven over and over and over again. Every study conducted says, and I know so many people when they feel overwhelmed or they feel anxious or they feel depressed, they run into the doctor and they write in them prescriptions. And I know people are depressed that take a prescription. They're still depressed. And the irony of it, you don't have to do a whole lot other than to be grateful. And see, that goes back to what I felt like God, what seemed like a curse at that moment in time where I was losing everything. And I thought, man, my world was collapsing and falling apart. Turned out to be the greatest gift that God could ever possibly bless me with. Because I feel like, God put me in a hospital for a reason, and I got to witness things I never would have witnessed otherwise. So, Doc, when I wake up in the morning and I open my eyes, I have a different level of gratitude than the average person, because I've seen people have freak accidents and lose their eyesight. When I'm walking to the bathroom to brush my teeth or wash my face in the morning, and I'm not lugging an oxygen tank and I'm not, pushing myself around on a wheelchair, I have a completely different gratitude than the average person, because I've seen people getting freak accidents and paralyzed or lugging an oxygen tank everywhere they go. When I look and I see my wife and next to me in bed, and I look at my kids and they're all healthy, I have a different level of gratitude than the average person, because I know you and I could be the ones living in Ukraine fighting a war we could never win, or we could be the ones, in in Syria, or in Africa, where we have no idea where the next meal is coming from for our families. And sometimes the most beautiful things are right in front of us, but we just get overwhelmed because we're trying to, we have an expectation of what our life is supposed to look like. And when we don't have that, and then we allow ourselves to get into, depression or anxiety or fear or worry about tomorrow. And see, that's what robs us from joy and happiness and peace, because we get caught up in, well, what if this happens? And what if this happens? If I don't get enough money, what if I lose my home? What if I lose my car? What if I embarrass myself? And it's the ifs and the whats is robbing you of peace and happiness and joy rather than living in the moment. And, Christ said this 2,000 years ago, and he is so dead on true today. He says to your audience, to you, Doc, and to me and every single person listening in right now, saying, look, I'm going to give you enough joy, enough peace, enough happiness, enough creativity, enough wisdom for today. And if you're worried about tomorrow, you're just robbing yourself of the moment today to really be able to experience that level of joy and that level of peace and that level of happiness. And by the way, guess how far tomorrow is? You're going to love this. My daughter sends me this article. I cannot wait till you meet all my kids. We're cousins, but I feel like we're so distant from one another. But I'm praying for that day to come soon where you get to meet my kids. But one of my kids, wicked smart, graduated with honors from UCLA. She wanted to become a NASA scientist at one point. She's pursuing her medical career right now. And she sends me this article. She goes, Daddy, you're going to find this article interesting. Do you know how far tomorrow is? She tells me 8 minutes, 12 seconds away is how long it takes a sun flare to reach planet Earth and vaporize every single one of us. And that's truth, because when you look at the sun flares and you see these bursts that we constantly have, and all it takes is one to reach our planet and vapor. And we get caught up in worrying about tomorrow and the stresses of tomorrow that we forget to be present today. So when I look at my life, I don't worry about tomorrow. I don't allow tomorrow because it would rob me today. So I'm in the presence today. When I'm with you, when I'm with your audience, when I'm with a billionaire, with a homeless guy, they get 100% of my undivided attention. Not sometimes, but always. And it allows me to speak life into them in ways I've never really, because I allow the Holy Spirit to move me. And I'll close on the last question. You were talking about, the studies and the placebos. Here's another study, and I can't remember what medical journal, if it was the Boston Medical Journal, but I know it was one of the, the well-known journals that conducted a study probably 2 decades ago or thereabouts, that said they followed 100 people that were diagnosed with terminal illness. And 87 of them died within a week of the time they were given. So let's just say that the doctors gave them 4 weeks to live. They died in week number 3, 4, or week number 5. And they went and interviewed the families, and they were saying, Sally, was okay with it. Joanne accepted it. Bob, knew it was his time, and he moved on and he made peace. And they went to the remaining 13%. 13%, and they were still around. And it says, help me. He says, who are they to put a date stamp on me? Who are they to tell me when I'm going to die? I want to walk my daughter down the wedding aisle. I want to play with my grandchild. I have these things that God has put in my heart that I'm committed to doing. And see, what made the difference is that the 13% that are still with us today, every single one of them had a purpose. Every single one of them had something to want to fight for and to live for. And sometimes that's when you get tired. When I got tired, listen, let me just tell you this, going through what I went through, pancreatic cancer, every 2 weeks, I had to have a procedure where they went into my pancreas, changed the stent, and we were flipping a coin. I didn't know whether I was going to go to the morgue or go home. Every hour on the hour when I was home, my bags had to be, my bandages had to be changed. And if they weren't, the pancreatic fluid, which is just digestive enzyme, as you know, will back in and starts digesting my organs, and I'm back in the hospital for 3, 4, 5 weeks. All of a sudden, I was experiencing that level of pain, and the pain, pancreatic, there's no greater pain or no worse pain to humankind than pancreatic pain. So trust me, there was many times where I wanted to surrender. I wanted to give up. I was just too overwhelming. It was just too painful. I just like it was hard to endure. But guess what? I had something to fight for. I had something to want to live for. I did want to walk my girls down the wedding aisle. I did want to play with my grandkids. I did want to serve God. And that's the other thing that, when I closed my eyes briefly, when the doctor said, I'm sorry, it's time, I could tell you, even though it was a brief blink of an eye, in my heart of hearts, I knew this, Doc, that if this was my time, I knew Jesus Christ would not run to the pearly gates and give me a hug and said, Del, I am so proud of you. I knew he wouldn't. Because even though I was a devoted Christian, even though I was very active in the community, even I was extremely generous with my donations and giving, God had put so much more in my heart, so much more to do. And I was like, God, tomorrow I'm going to do all these things for you. God, when I sell the company, God, when I do this, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to build a church. I'm going to build this orphanage. I'm going to make this impact. And I realized in that moment in time that tomorrow wasn't coming. And all the insight and all the intuition and all the dreams that God has put in my heart weren't going to happen in that moment in time. And that's when I said, God, give me one more chance to get it right. It wasn't to get it right to go make more money or buy more houses or investments. To get it right was to truly make a difference on what God has put in my heart. And that's the impact I'm working on right now.
And you are doing a beautiful job.
I love you. I love you.
I love you too. There's several parts in your story that I had some tears coming to my eyes. And I'm sure there's people in our audience who that happened to as well. And there's a few things that I wrote down in what you shared. The first is a quote that it's similar to what you shared. I heard it from the Dalai Lama years ago, and he said, worrying does not take away tomorrow's troubles, it just takes away today's peace.
Yep.
And so rather than worry, whatever the current situation is, given what is, what will I do about it? How can
Yep.
I show up to make this easier for myself and for others? What's the one thing I can do, even if it's only like 1%, is creating some movement. But
Yep.
worry is just paralyzing. Worry doesn't do anything. The second thing is you mentioned, this is going back a little bit, but you mentioned belief. And I come from a space that I know what you believe based on what you do and who you be, how
Yep.
you show up in the world. And so I want our listeners to just start to take a moment, pause and question, reflect on what do I believe in all the different areas of my life? Like, what do I believe? And then you're going to get some answers. This is what I say I believe. Now, great. Now that you say that, is how you spend your time, your energy, your money, your attention, etc. Is that a reflection of what you say you believe? Because if it's not, then at that point, it's only a belief in name. It's
Yep.
not a belief in practice. And so, coming from that space, I challenge you from a loving space. Question what you believe, and then find out, do I actually believe that? And what's the evidence? I live that way. My actions reflect it. Next thing to be with that stood out to me, I come from a space that life is my teacher. Adele gave examples of driving in the car and somebody cuts him off, and you don't know where that person's going and what might be happening. For me, the external reality is always giving me opportunities and reflections on how I just showed up. So I showed up in a certain way and I got a certain response. Or somebody's going through something and then I reacted instead of responded in the way that I would have loved to. And in hindsight, ideally, as close to that moment as possible, with practice, you can catch it in the moment. And then ideally, even before then, so then you can act the way you would prefer. But you say, hold on a second, I had an opportunity today to be more compassionate, to be more present, to be more loving, to be more generous, to help in whatever the way, to be less judgmental. How'd I do? And there's no judgment on it. It's just a reflection. How did I do there relative to whatever ideal I might be striving for? And when you go, well, I did okay here and I have some work to do. in that area. Great. Life's going to give you an infinite number of chances to practice that. And so, how are you showing up to that practice? Are you being intentional about it? And then the last thing is there's an old saying, it's in the Christian world, but it applies in any where it's WWJD, what would Jesus do? But you can substitute Jesus for any figure that you respect. It could be a parent, it could be a role model, it could be a religious spiritual figure, it could be a person who you just respect for whatever the reason. What would insert name do? And when you sit there in a situation and go, I don't know what to do right now. Let's say it's in business. I'm not sure what to do right now. And there's someone in business you really look up to that you know a bit about. Well, how would that person respond in this situation? Or there's a religious spiritual figure, let's say, or somebody that's very loving and compassionate that you know. How would they respond right now? That's going to give you so much more perspective on how to best handle the moment. And so, what would insert name do is such a simple and powerful exercise that you could step into your world. And so I do
That's
have a question for you, but prior to that, I noticed you wrote something. Is there anything you want to add to what I just said?
no. I listen. I think you captured it. And for your audience, and I have to say this to your audience. I know they know you, uh, probably just as good as I know you, but I do need to say this, Doc. From the day I met you, you left such an impact on my heart because of how genuine, how real, and how loving and how passionate you truly are about every single person that you come in contact with. Your dad was an MD, a very incredibly respected man in the medical profession. But you also went and you got the MD degree, but you chose a different path. You chose the path of saying, yes, Western medicine is good, but you know what? I know something stronger, something more powerful than the traditional, let me write you a prescription. And if you're able to connect with your inner self, you're able to be so much more powerful, so much more impactful. You're able to self heal. And not only do that, but you're able to heal others. And you bring a light that not a lot of people bring. So I just want to really recognize you for the incredible gift and the beautiful light that you truly bring to the podcast, to your audience, and especially to my life. I really truly love you, and I respect you, and I think the world of you, man. And not a lot of people would give up, the years of education that you went through to pursue something that God has put in your heart. Because for you, it wasn't about let me go out and make $1 million or $2 million, which a lot of the doctors are making now. You're saying right now you're more interested in the well-being of your audience and speaking life into them, as you have done since the day I met you in my life, and never looked for anything in return other than to check up on me and make sure that I'm fine, I'm healthy, my well-being is good, and that just truly make you special. Which leads me to the follow-up thing. And I said the greatest feeling in the world is when you put your head on a pillow and God is proud of you. The second greatest feeling, and I know you experience this more than the average person, is when you look in the mirror and you're proud of the reflection that you see in the mirror. There's no greater feeling. And Christ, when you think of God, when I go, and I'm a sunset chaser, I'm a sunrise chaser. If you look at my phone, 95% of my pictures of sunrises and sunsets and just natural beauty. And to me, that's God, but it's hard to comprehend. So Christ called him the Father, just so the average person could relate. And the average father who says, you know what? I always say, man, when you look at your kids, can you think of a proud moment or something that your kids did in school or in sports or in life that you were proud of them? And virtually every parent that I've ever asked that question says, absolutely. And I says, you're probably more proud of them than themselves. Like, absolutely. And I says, just imagine that when you look in the mirror and you're proud of the reflection, just imagine in that moment in time how much more God is actually proud of you. And, it goes back to when I'm walking and I see this homeless guy, trust me, I get so many like, look, keep going. He's probably a scam. He's probably stinks. He probably haven't showered. He probably you don't have time for this. You're running late. You're wearing your nice suit. You don't want to dirty yourself, and you'll come up with so many reasons as to why you should not do the right thing. But in the moments that you do quiet all that noise and all the critters that's going on in there, and you stop and you pause and you have a dialogue with that homeless guy, or maybe you just have lunch with him or her, you know that's the impact that I think that you're talking about. That you don't have to, it doesn't have to be something so grand and so amazing and so you're outdoing anything or someone epic for you to experience true peace or true love, or truly looking in the mirror being proud. Sometimes it's the simplest things in your life that you could be so proud of. And it's that stacking, the more that you do it, the more, like, God gives us a reward system. Every time I've done something good, and I want your audience to think of a time that you did something good in your life, and look at the feeling you experience. It's a feeling that just feels great. It's the greatest feeling. Sometimes you almost feel guilty. It's like, man, I'm not supposed to feel this good, when you help someone in need. But I truly believe that that's God's reward system, is just letting us know to do more of it. No amount of money, no amount of success ever brings you that level of fulfillment where you feel your life has a purpose. And sometimes it's the simplest, smallest things that your audience, that you or anyone that could do to serve others or impact somebody's life in ways that sometimes just the words of encouragement make a world of difference. And there's no until now, I still get people that I've had conversations with maybe 10, 15 years ago, and they come up to me and says, Del, I just want to let you know, man, the impact that you had on my life and how it changed my. And honestly, I don't even remember those conversations, but just seeing their excitement and seeing that how I had an influence of what I thought was a small, irrelevant conversation impacted their life in such a profound way makes me feel like, you know what? Okay, God, let me do a little bit more of that then.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for what you shared. I really appreciate it, and I received that. And what you just shared, that last statement applies to everybody. You never know the impact that you're having on people around you.
Yep.
And there's a story, it's a little heavy, but my girlfriend shared it with me a while back, and I've shared it on the podcast, but right now it's so relevant. My girlfriend's a therapist, and she was made aware of this story, of the real true story. It was a person, I believe it was in New York City, but regardless, in a big city, and the person was really depressed, and they were contemplating suicide. And the person wrote a letter, and they said in the letter, I'm going to walk to the bridge and I'm going to jump. And if anybody smiles at me between here and the bridge, I won't jump. And they jumped because nobody smiled at them. And now imagine that our listener, you're the one who walked by them, and it's not meant to be a pressure, like you have to, but you were maybe so caught up in the phone, or you were so discounting the people around you, like Adele just said, oh, just that's just a homeless guy, and we label somebody and we kind of write them off. Or we think, I'm in a rush, I'm busy right now. So we ignore everything going on around us right now in this moment. And in that moment, if that person walked by you, your smile had the power to save a life. And when you go to the grocery store, and like you mentioned, maybe the person ringing you up is in a mood, something's going on. You could tell they seem heavy or troubled, or you're outside and your neighbor, it seems like something's going on. You could catch it, be aware of it, and not say anything, or you could catch it and just express some love and express some support and just hold some space. That could literally be the thing that makes or break the day for them. But
That's
you
true.
never know. And so if you come from that space of what if my presence in the world right now is making far more of an impact than I even realize? And what if every person I come into contact with, I have the opportunity to either make their day better, their experience of the day better, or the experience of the day worse? And a maybe even more powerful way of being with it, each person has, let's say, a thermostat, let's say, of their perspective of the world. Some people think the world's a really beautiful place and it's all these amazing, wonderful things. And some people think the world is really scary. Now, when they come into contact with you, especially if they don't know you yet, you, without even realizing it, are going to prove one of those two realities in their mind. Now, what if you could show them a level of love and presence and understanding and just generosity and a willingness to be supportive to a fellow human being on the path that they maybe have never gotten exposed to before? And it doesn't really cost you anything outside of a few moments. But if you showed up that way, you're proving to them in their mind, maybe the world's not as scary of a place as I think it is. Maybe there are good people out there. Maybe if you're a man listening, maybe there's a woman and maybe she's been through a lot regarding men and she doesn't trust men at all. And maybe your presence as this grounded, safe male figure, just for a brief period of time, has her think, I've never met a guy like that. Maybe there are others like him. And then she ends up opening up down the road and getting married, and she's with somebody that it's the perfect fit for her. But it happened because you were the turning point. There was this some guy that she ran into. You never know. So all that to be said, your presence matters and you're making a difference without even realizing it.
100%. Well said, Doc.
Thank you. There's
Well,
a there's a story that our relationship began in a way for me that was very unconventional in the sense that it started off in a really, really beautiful, profound way, and it literally shifted the trajectory of my life in a really big way. And before I comment on it, I would love to give you an opportunity to share anything you'd like, and then I'll just share the aspect that I think would be really relevant to our listeners.
yeah. Listen, here's what I wanted. I want to kind of bring up, and again, so the one thing that you realize about me today is I'm so obedient to what God has put on my heart. And there's a lot of times where God will put things in my heart, and I'll talk myself out of them, right? I was like, I don't want to embarrass myself. What if happened if they rejected me? What, I don't want to impose myself. I don't want to do these things. And, it's amazing when you're observant and to the point that you were just making a little while ago, Doc, just, you know, how many people feel betrayed or how many people feel unloved, how many people feel unseen, how many people feel unheard, how many people are lonely. Today, 80% of Gen Z and Gen Alpha don't believe in God, which is something really tragic when you look at this, because I cannot imagine going through puberty, high school, college, getting married, going to the Marine Corps, raising a family, and enduring what I went through without God in my life. I can't imagine how empty and how hopeless life would be. And when I look at the effect right now, this generation, the generation that you and I are witnessing, has the highest suicide rate of any generation in our lifetime ever recorded. There's never been, and it's tragic. And it's like, but why? Like, how does this make sense? We live in the greatest country in the world. And if you have not been outside the United States and traveled, and I've traveled the world and I've been to third world countries and I've seen the most horrific sights and how people live in and how people are treated and just the poverty that they live in. And they'll give up everything to be homeless in the streets of the United States. Because even if you're homeless, you still have resources, you still have means to eat. You'll never go hungry if you choose not to go hungry. And you'll always have a roof over your head. You always have people helping. So here's the greatest country in the world, yet we have the highest suicide rate of any country currently. It makes absolutely no sense. And for me, it's when God is absent, because here's how I look at the life. If God is not present in your life, I know who is. There's never a moment in time where you're absent from God's presence and you're absent from the devil's or the enemies. It can't be done. There's someone always present in your life. And people that have true God's calling. And I know a lot of your audience probably are non-believers and rightfully so, for various reasons of betrayal, reasons that the most trusted people in their life or trusted figures in their life betrayed them or let them down or hypocrites. I mean, those are the ones that just, who claim to be Christians, but they act nothing like Christians. You know, if you look at Christ's life, that was so full of love, so full of compassion, so full of mercy, spoke life into you. You know, when they brought him, the woman that has been unfaithful to her husband, and they wanted to stone her to death, and just says, Christ, what do we do with her? Lord, what do we do with her? He said, let he cast the first stone who he has not sinned. And so he didn't say only if you sinned a big sin or small. It was a sin was a sin. And he's like, if you didn't sin, go ahead and cast a stone. Because he knows we're all sinners. And he told us to go home and just find peace. So if you look at Christ and the peace that he was bringing into our lives, it's life is meaningful. Life has a purpose. He gives us hope when hope is absent. My life verse, if you say, Amor, either where do you live? My life verse, Romans 8:11. The same spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you. And see, it's a choice. If you choose to believe that, the impossible now becomes possible. Whatever you thought in your life, whatever dreams God has put in your life, and I truly believe every dream, every idea, every creation, everything that you feel, man, my life has more purpose, more meaning. I know I was created for something so much bigger. I'm not doing what I'm doing, but I don't know how. If you allow the choice where the impossible becomes possible, if you choose to believe Romans 8:11, then you're able to do things in supernatural powers. Because if you try to do it on your own powers, good luck. I could never do anything on my own powers. And when people say, bro, it can't be done, it's like, yeah, you're right. I can't do it on my own. But with God, the impossible becomes possible. And when you're talking about the placebo effect, this is the truth. Faith. It's either you have it or you don't. And when you have faith that's unshakable, you're able to move mountains. You're able to create and do things you never thought possible. And here's what I realized. The moment I became obedient and the moment I was like, okay, God, I don't know how, but let's go. I'm in. I sign up. You gave me this idea. It's too grand. I don't know how to do it. Here's what I realized. I'm only one decision away. I'm only one idea away. I'm only one meeting away from meeting that one person. Could be in a grocery store. It could be at work. It could be just me jogging or walking. From meeting that one person that would change the trajectory of my life as I know it today. And if I tell you how many times God has put these ideas in my heart, I was like, okay, God, let's go. I don't know how. And I trust and I was faithful. He introduces me to someone that was like, it came out of nowhere, who then introduces me to someone, who then introduces, and all of a sudden I look back and it's little bits and pieces of puzzle that God has put in my heart. And all of a sudden I'm doing what I never thought I could possibly do. Because I'm always seeking, I'm always trusting, and I'm always believing the impossible becomes possible. He gives us those supernatural powers, healing that I never experienced before. And if I may talk about experience with you, you know, I had gone in, I was having a cup of coffee and I dropped it. And I thought, oh man, what a schmuck, as my dad would call me, you know. And I thought, oh man. So I went cleaned it up, you know. I put the broken cup in the trash, and I grabbed another cup and made my second cup of coffee. And I started walking away. I dropped that one too, and I thought, oh man, what just happened? And I realized on my right side was significantly weaker than my left side. And I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. And I thought, I think I'm having a stroke. I had my wife, I hate going into ambulances, even though my wife was pleading with me to go into ambulance. I said, no, I'm good. I said, you drive. So we ended up going to the emergency room. And from there, they ran some tests and it says, you're being airlifted to a trauma center that specializes in strokes. We don't. And you're having a stroke as we're speaking right now, and it's not looking good. And we're looking, and I'm like, what's happening? And all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by a team of doctors. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I think I was really scared. Even though I went through what I was going through with pancreatic cancer, I was never really scared. I just had that peace. And But when I got surrounded by all these doctors and nurses and they're all freaking out, they got me freaking out. And I was like, okay, so there's like, okay, we called it a helicopter, and they're talking, and I hear one doctor says, look, it'll probably be a lot faster. We got an ambulance on standby. Let's just throw them in an ambulance and send them to the nearest hospital, which is like 15-minute drive. He says we'll probably get there before the helicopter lands on the roof. And sure enough, they took me there. They rushed me immediately into the surgery room. They're talking about having surgery. They said I was bleeding profusely from the artery here on the side of my neck, and I'm having stroke. And they're talking, and my default prayer is Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd, and I kind of went into prayer. I'm terrified. My wife is clueless. She's outside. I'm not sure what the doctor was saying to her. She was not allowed to be in the surgery room with me. And I'm scared. I'm scared. And so we're waiting for the surgeon. Surgeon comes in, introduces himself. He orders another MRI, and they do the MRI. And then I hear him in the background kind of saying it's impossible, it can't be done, that makes no sense. How's that even possible? And the doctor comes up to me and goes, Mr. Sayegh, we're ready to operate, but he goes, let me show you images, let me show you how you're bleeding, let me show you where you were having a stroke, and right now the bleeding stopped. He goes, we want to keep you here at least overnight for observation, but he goes, I'm not going to cut you up if you're not bleeding. And he goes, I don't know how to explain this. And in my heart of hearts, I knew what was happening. And, of course, I get sent home. They told me I have severe plaque that's in my brain, that's covering my brain. They called it white plaque. And I was still having a lot of the stroke effect. They said I had minor stroke, nothing severe. I was still able to walk, not completely. I was kind of wobbly. I wasn't speaking, fully. I was just being on the quiet side. I was stuttering some of the words. And then I shared it with you. You are one of very few people, I could count them all on one hand, of how many people I shared what I was going with. And you went into, immediately, you dropped everything that you were doing. You said, I really want to help you, and I think I could help you. And I believe in healing powers, and you did your magic. And I went into it, I'm not gonna lie to you, I went into it with an open heart, but with a lot of uncertainty. I don't want to say hocus pocus kind of stuff, but I've never experienced what you do. I knew your heart was pure. I knew your intentions were pure. I knew you have one of the most beautiful spirits and soul of anyone I know. So I welcomed it with open arms. But I never mentioned that to you. But I wasn't unsure. I was unsure. And so, you did what you did, and I know you went into prayer and you went into healing, and you were sending me, just healing energy that I never experienced before. And I ended up going back in the emergency room, and they ran the tests, the same MRI tests, and the doctors came in and says, Mr. Sayegh, I have to show you. And he starts showing me images, both on the old traditional X-rays, and also on the computer. He goes, let me show you the plaque and the damage you had in your brain before, and let me show you what you look like now. And this was the only difference. The only thing that happened is you were doing your healing magic and believing that I was going to be healed. And he goes, I don't know how to explain it. And you were the first call I made, if you remember. I said, Doc, you're not going to believe this. I'm at the hospital, and here's what they're sharing with me. That was 2 years ago that this has happened. And I felt like God just waited until this very moment for me to share it. I think there's just someone out there in your audience that just needed to hear this today, that just how special of a gift that you really truly are, and that you do have um, those powers that God spoke of, those healing powers that are only trusted to the purest and the most gifted individuals that God says, I'm gonna trust you with a gift. And you are trusted with a gift. Since then, I go in every 3 months, like clockwork. They do the MRI on my brains. They're following up because of fear, that I'm going to have a stroke again. And the results are just incredible. They're phenomenal. I walk normal. I'm exercising. I'm in the gym. I do things I haven't been able to do in quite a long time. And of course, I thank God for blessing me with the gift of healing and for bringing you into my life, because you have been truly a blessing, and a healer and a believer and someone that has left an impact, not only on me, but the ripple effect on my family, my wife, my kids, and my community and everyone in my life. So I thank you, Doc. I've never said it to you in that way, but I'm so grateful for you. Really am.
Thank you so, so much. And if I may share this, it's interesting for our audience because they get to hear both sides of this. That experience was a massive shift in the trajectory of my life. I remember I was early on in the healing work that I was doing, and people had pain that they had their whole life. And I spent 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour with them, and the pain was gone. And that kept happening. And then you and I spoke maybe a month later. And I didn't understand the science of it the way I do now. And so I just had a lot of skepticism. So when you talked about it, I had it in truckloads. And there was this, well, these people are getting better, things are happening, but how do I know it's that? Like what it could be something else, maybe they're taking something, etc. And then you and I spoke, and I knew that you were working with, so many amazing practitioners, and you're in California, I'm in New York, and I just said to you, so for our listeners, the word amo is uncle in Arabic, and so I call Adel amo. And so I remember I said to you, Amo, do you believe God brings people together for a reason? And you just said, absolutely. And I said, I've been trained in something that I'm feeling called to share with you. It's gonna sound weird. Worst case scenario, nothing happens. Best case scenario, there's a miracle. Are you open to that? And you just said, I will do anything. And I was like, okay. And I explained it and I told you I could do it virtually. And you were like, that's interesting. And then we did our work. And then I remember you shared with me, what was going on with the brain.
Right.
And I did the healing work remotely for you for 8 days.
Yep.
And on the ninth day, I went out on a walk and I called it my conversation with God. I don't think I've never told you this. I went out for my what I call my conversation with God. And I just said, I really want to believe this healing stuff is real. But even though people are getting results, the skeptical part of me is not letting go. And I said, you got to give me something that's so undeniable that all that doubt just shifts. Less than 24 hours later, I get a video text message from you,
Right.
and you were like laughing. There were some tears in your eyes. You were in the hospital and you said, I just got a brain scan. Everything's completely normal. The doctors are calling it a miracle. I had tears in my eyes watching that video. And I just remember like that was the unlock. And that moment shifted so much, not only in my own life, but it had me dive deeper than I ever had into the work. And as a result of that, whether it was cancers, autoimmune disease, pains people have had, so many miracles have happened in people's world. But if I didn't have that experience with you, that may not have happened. And so, first of all, thank you for the trust and the willingness to experience it. And I'm just really grateful and feeling blessed that everything worked out the way that it did.
Me too. Me too. You're such a beautiful blessing. Um, and like I said, it's something I've never experienced before in my life. If somebody told me that, I would just be kind of curious, for lack of a better word. But it's amazing. It's amazing because I truly believe that that's the faith that God believes. If you believe it, God will perform it. And that's what faith is believing in the unknown and believing in the unseen and trusting. So many times we don't get into trusting. I live my life, like I said earlier, in the simplest form imaginable. Because in the end of the day, without fail, I'm going to ask myself this question: God, were you proud of me today? And so, Doc, what happens is throughout the entire day, I still have decisions to make throughout the entire day. Before I used to contemplate on the decisions, I gave an example a little over a year ago. I had an incredible opportunity to make a lot of money, $10 million. And it's a lot of money then, it's a lot of money today. And the old me would have justified. It's like, oh, well, God, if you make this happen, I will do all these things for you. And today, I just simply ask, God, would this make you proud? If I know the answer is no, I spend no time in it at all, like zero time contemplating, trying to justify, trying to go through it in my head. But if the answer is yes, if my no's means no, guess what my yeses mean? My yes means yes. And when I make a decision, I don't second guess myself anymore. I don't go back and I'm not, reevaluating, should I have done this? And how many times have your audience or you've made a decision and you're second guessing yourself? Was that the right decision? Was that the right partnership? Should I do this? Should I have not done this? Should I walk down that way? What if I fail? What if this goes wrong? What if this happens? And you kind of go into that crazy figure eight rather than be on a trajectory that God has put you on where you're thriving and you're killing it because you believe with absolute, that's what you're supposed to do. Now you're in that crazy eight going around and second guessing yourself. And whenever you're in that state, you're no longer in a thriving state. You're in stagnancy state. And, a dear friend of mine says, man, you're either growing and thriving or you're dying. There is no between. And if you're stagnant, like the table that I just banged on, you're dead. You just don't know it yet. And the question is, how many of you are dead and just don't know it yet? How many of you are stagnant and just don't know it yet? And to thrive and to receive and to live a life of fulfillment, a life of purpose is the greatest gift that you could ever possibly give yourself. Because there's no regrets. You're living life on your terms, not what some social media or some rating or what others think of you. I could care less what anyone thinks of me today. Before it mattered. It mattered, I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted, to fit in. Today, none of that means anything. And I'll tell you why. Because when I got really, 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 really sick, I would ask my wife and I said, baby, does so-and-so check up on me? No, baby. I said, does so-and-so check up on you? No, baby. Does so-and-so come over the house and check up on? No, baby. And some of those were considered my dearest, closest friends. When I needed them most, they weren't there. But she would tell me, but I tell you who did come over. I told you who came over and cooked for the kids or cleaned the house or bought me, food or whatever it is. And it was sometimes the people that I least expected. And today, the only thing that matters is not the quantity of people in my life. It's about the quality of people in my life. What truly matters today is my relationship, being able to look in the mirror and know that I'm proud, despite what social media, despite what anyone is going to say about what I should be doing. I don't care what they think. Not even my pastor. I love my pastor's death, but it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. It matters what I feel God is saying to me, how to live my life with a purpose, how to live my life with intention. And that is a great feeling, especially when you look in the mirror and you're really proud of the reflection that you see in that mirror. The second greatest feeling to knowing that how proud God is proud of you.
I so love that. There is a couple things that I thought would be really useful for us to discuss as just themes. And when I think about the rich life that you've lived, personally, professionally, spiritually, relationally, everything, I'll share the word and then or the theme, and you just let me know like what does that mean to you, and anything you think could be helpful for our audience. And so the first one that came to mind, leadership.
Yeah, I love that word. I work closely. with John Maxwell. I think many of your audience may know him. Just I think he's written well over 100 books on leadership. One of the, leadership is not when people follow you. Leadership is being able to inspire people. Leadership is about being a servant leader. What I realized, in my past life, when I was building my company, and there was a lot of times where we're, ruling with the iron fist and dictating what we want, and therefore we've always experienced a high turnover. But when we became servant leaders, leaders that were believing in people, inspiring people to be the best version of themselves, I realized those are the ones that would take a bullet for you. I noticed those are the ones that will follow you until, all corners of earth or eternity. I realized that when you inspire people to be truly the best version of themselves is when you're the greatest leader. Christ was the perfect greatest leader. He led by inspiring. He led by speaking life into people. He led by making them believe that they're so much greater than they ever thought of themselves.
That's a beautiful answer. Yeah, when it's like whether with children, with our own children, or whether it's our companies, our team members, the people that we meet, if you could help, I forgot the exact quote, but I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's something that when people spend time with you, do they think that you're the most interesting person in the world, or did you help them see that they were the most interesting person in the world because of the level of presence and curiosity that you brought to that conversation where they felt that you actually saw them.
Yeah.
And there's something so magical about that. The next theme that I'd love to get your take on, patience.
Mm. Yeah. I laugh at this because that was the one area I struggled with. I always wanted things on Adele's time. When I made a decision, I wanted it to happen right now. And I struggled with that. That was probably one of the areas growing up with, I really struggled with the most. Today, I think patience is truly a virtue. And it's a great gift because I'm no longer on things on my time. I'm on God's time. And, when I see things and I was like, God, I trust you. Whenever you want it, let's go. I'm ready. Time just flies by. I'm no longer anxious. I'm no longer disappointed. I'm no longer let down. Um, and I have an inner peace that for the first time, it's the inner peace that surpasses understanding while the world around me could be falling apart. Yet there's a peace in my heart that is hard to explain. And that's patience. That's patience. That's just being patient and trusting um, that life is happening for you and not to you. And that's a great feeling. That's a quote from another dear friend who I absolutely think the world of. Tony Robbins says it quite a bit. Life is happening for you, and I use that term quite a bit because when life is happening for you, it's so differently than when it's happening to you.
Beautifully said. The next thing that came to mind, purpose through pain.
Mm. Um, I didn't know what my purpose was for the longest time. I could tell you that there was always that hole in my heart, in my soul, and I didn't know how to fill it. God was always present in my life, but He wasn't the most important thing in my life. He wasn't present all the time. He was present when I needed Him, when I needed to pray, and I was trying to fill that emptiness or that hole with materialistic things because at that time it was easy. I could afford it. And it was, just, when the hole became bigger, when I got a bigger car and then a bigger car and then the yachts and all the planes but it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, man, even like I remember buying my first $3 million car. I was like, oh, I can't believe I bought. It was a great day until I saw the scratch in the car. And it went from being a great day to being a miserable day. And I realized that wasn't something I was going to put my confidence in or my faith in. And it wasn't until I went through the darkest moments of my life that I realized what my purpose was. And here's the thing that may surprise your audience. I have never read the Bible until I got sick. every attempt I had to read the Bible, I struggled with. I would begin with Genesis, and it begins with so and so lived to be 950 years, and so and so lived to be 1100 years, and the list just goes on. And then there's 5 pages of begotten, so and so begotten, so and so begotten, so and so. And my logic side of my brain was like, who was keeping record back then? And I would question these things. I was like, God, I'm so sorry. I know you're present. I know who you are. I could feel you. I have a special relationship, but I'm so sorry. This is making me question you. And I would just put it aside. And you know, I realized one thing later in life. If and the analogy I want to give your audience and give you is if you were driving in downtown Manhattan, since you're a New Yorker, and your car breaks down, the chances of Doc you pulling over, opening the glove box, taking out the owner's manual, start reading it, it's pretty slim. When you could pick up and call AAA or call your favorite garage to come and pick up your car. Would you agree?
Yeah.
What if you are on a dark, deserted road in the middle of nowhere? No one is in sight, and you have no reception, let alone you have no phone. What's the likelihood you're going to pull over, open the glove box, take out the owner's manual, start reading it?
100%.
As an inventor, when I invented things, people did when they didn't understand how my technology worked, they either A, picked up the phone and says, hey, Adel, this cool technology you just created or you just built, walk me through how it works. And if Adele was not around or my R&D team was not around, guess what they did? Every product that we've ever manufactured had an owner's manual. And they would go through the owner's manual, understanding how we created it, its purpose, and how to troubleshoot it. And the analogy for me was I had to go through that dark road to pick up the Bible and start reading it and understanding it, not from my perspective, but from God's perspective. Because the Bible wasn't written by God, it was inspired by God, written by man. So of course it's going to have, it's things that makes me question because it was man that written it, but inspired by God. By the time I put the Bible down, I walked away with one word to describe the entire Bible. That took me 365 days. It was not intentional. I had not planned it that it was going to work out that way, but it took me an entire year to read the Bible. And I had all the time in the world because I was in a hospital. Now, I would spend 14, 15, 16-hour days, and I would read a chapter. I had no idea what I was reading sometimes. And then I would go on YouTube and do what a search. GPT was not available to me then. And I wanted to hear from every pastor, anyone who had anything positive or negative to say about that particular chapter so I could get educated. But by the time I put the Bible down, the word I walked away with was love. That's how it was described. So I went through the pain to realize what love was, to realize what my calling and what my purpose is. When you live your purpose, that's the energy that I'm talking about, waking up every single morning with an excitement and a level of energy, a level of enthusiasm that is so much greater than you. Before I used to wake up and I'm tired, I'm joggy, I'm boggy, I don't want to do these things. I don't want to drive. I'm already calculating in my head. Oh man, I got to drive 2 hours in the snow. I got to drive in LA. I live in LA. There's not a lot of snow, but there's traffic. And I would be today, it's just like, let's go. I don't care because I'm living my purpose. I'm living my calling. It's the greatest feeling in the world when you live in that level of calling. So yes, you are going to go through tribulation. The Bible talks about it. Yes, you're going to go through life challenges. Yes, you're going to go through disappointments. Yes, you're going to go through letdowns. Yes, you're going to go through heartbreaks. Yes, people are going to walk out on you. Yes, people that you love and you trust the most are going to not just be there when you need them most. Yes, you will be hurt. Yes, you'll be taken advantage of. That's just life. And if you anticipate these things are going to happen and you live in that your purpose or what God has called you to do, this stuff doesn't matter. I'm already anticipating. I'm already expecting these things. I don't allow people to dictate when I'm joyful and when I'm not. because I'm living my purpose. I know every single morning I'll wake up, I'm doing what God wants me to do. And that's one of the greatest feelings. And I would have not recognized that unless I had gone through the pain and suffering. You know about the financial, you know about the medical pain. What you don't know is about the financial pain. So I know we're on a limited time, so I'll just be really brief with this, Doc. While I was fighting for my life, the most unthinkable thing happened in my company. The people that I trusted the most, one in particular, she was with me for 14 years, been to every one of my kids' baptism. I had not taken a single family vacation without her. I, in the 14 years since the day she started with me, she's been to every family function I've ever had, whether it's a picnic at the park or a New Year's celebration or just a holiday or just hanging out. She was more family than some of my own family. And she was the person that I turned the company over to her and the president. I said, sweetheart, allow me to focus on my health. And the most trusted person in my life, what do you think she did? The unthinkable. Christmas Eve, I get a phone call from a finance manager says, Adele, I'm so sorry. I'm resigning effective immediately. Take a look at the emails I just sent you. Your numbers are not what they seem. They were giving me numbers telling me how great my company was doing. A year earlier, I was in negotiations with a company by the name of Stanley Black and Decker. You may know them. I know your audience probably knows of them. And I was ready to exit at $1 billion. We were shy of $1 billion. I think it was 350 million, if I'm not mistaken, in cash, and the rest was stock options. And I was going to be the first Jordanian in my community to exit at $1 billion, and it was an exciting moment. But I went from that to when I learned about what they had done. They had forged my signature virtually in every document, taken out lines of credit, secured by my personal assets, my home, my cars, everything you can imagine. And I went from that to talking to bankruptcy attorneys. I ended up taking a 25-year-old company that was thriving and valued at nearly $1 billion to file for bankruptcy. The most awful, I mean, one of the most difficult days. I still get emotional on it because I can't help but the entire street was lined up with tow trucks, taking away every single car I had. I liquidated, virtually lost 95% of all my real estate investments that I worked so hard for over the course of 25 years to build. And it wasn't something I did. And there was a part of me that said, but that's just not fair. I didn't do this. I didn't do this. And I didn't know why I was going through some of these trials. But that pain, what I've endured, turned out to be the greatest gift in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. As a matter of fact, I give it, if somebody, I was going to exit at $1 billion. If somebody gave me $10 billion and says, Adele, here's $10 billion. And oh, by the way, we paid all your taxes. So it's $10 billion yours on 3 conditions. Condition 1, your relationship goes back. I'm sorry. Yes, your relationship goes back to where it was with God. And she said, Adel, how was it with God? It was great. I prayed every night. I never hurt anyone, never cheated anyone, never took advantage of anyone. It's great. The second is I never gotten sick. I didn't have to go through the uncertainty. My family didn't have to go through. I mentioned to you that, the amount of surgeries every 2 weeks, we had to flip a coin whether I was going to the morgue or not. If I was home, my family had to endure the unthinkable of every hour on the hour, changing out my bags and just, being given your last stripes on 3 separate occasions, or just imagine the burden that I had on my heart as well as my family. I didn't have to go through that. Right. And the third is I didn't lose my baby. I didn't lose my company. My ability was my identity. My entire identity was tied into my company. Those are the 3 things that had to go back to where they were before I got sick. And here's $10 billion. Would you take it? Here's what I would tell you, and here's what I would tell every person listening to this. There's not enough money in the world that you could ever possibly give me to turn the clock back. Because the greatest gift is me going through the pain, me going through the suffering, me going through the anxiety, me going through the unknown, me going through on the uncharted territory that made me the man that I am, that brought me the peace that I have today, that brought me the joy that allowed me to see every situation and every circumstance and every single person I come across, not from my lenses that wanted to judge and be critical, but from Christ's lenses that wants to love and be compassionate and speak life into them. And that's where I find the joy and the peace that surpasses understanding every single minute of every single day.
It's so beautiful, and I thank you for sharing with our audience. The experiences that we go through in the moment can feel like the most unfair, painful, heavy, why me, like traumatic things. And on the flip side of that experience, if we're open to the possibility, the lessons, the learnings, the experiences, the people that could come into our world as a result of that, sometimes the most beautiful things in your life only have occurred because of a challenge, a hardship, a tragedy, something that occurred earlier. And if you could go back and undo that, you'd also lose everything that came after. And
Amen.
I have spoken to so many people who've told me about some what most people would consider horrendous things that they've been through, but because of how that grew them, who they became as a result of it, the strength spiritually that developed, and the relationships potentially that were birthed out of that, they wouldn't, as you said, want to go back and change anything because despite the pain they went through, what they have now or what they got to experience between then and now was worth it.
Absolutely. It's your characters where your characters define. This is where you're light. And, it's like you have to be refined. And for me, and for your audience, I know some of you are going through a really difficult time right now. I could just feel it. But I just need you to be trusting that life is happening to you. It's hard for me to connect with people and say, I know what it feels like to lose everything. I know what it feels like to get medical diagnosis and every from City of Hope to John Hopkins to MD Anderson to tell you, I'm sorry, there's nothing left we could do. And whether you're facing a medical crisis, whether you're facing a financial crisis, whether you're facing a family crisis, what if life is happening for you? And God is building you to be a light, a beacon of hope, so you can relate to others. I had to go through a drug rehab because I was put on so much drugs. I can get every attempt I made to get off of it on my own. I would end up in an emergency room, doc. And before the old me, I would be like, "You could do it, it's in your head." And I used to have breakthroughs. Today, I sympathize. Like when I see people going through a really hard time, or especially with drug abuse, I relate to them. I know what it feels. I know how difficult it is. It's not easy, but you know what? We could do it together. I've been through it. I know what it feels like to have the urges, to have the cravings. But together, I know we could overcome your life challenges. And if God is creating you, building you, so He could use you for something so much greater, something so much more beautiful that brings you life purpose and fulfillment and joy and happiness. And you look in the mirror and you're proud of what you're seeing, trust it that life is happening for you, and that God is preparing you to use you in ways you can't even fathom right now.
Yeah, when I look back at my own life and I think about the hardest moments, they literally forged me into who I am today. And if they did not happen, I would be a completely different person. And I'm very grateful for the man I am and the impact that I'm blessed to have and the people that I've been blessed to support and be supported by. And none
Mm.
of that would have happened if I didn't go through those really challenging moments. And so, as a closing theme, and it goes to what you just shared, a legacy.
So, um, here's how I look at legacy. Like I tie unconditional love with legacy. So a lot of people want to say, what is the legacy you left behind? And before for me it was like I thought my company was my legacy. But how long does your company last until somebody else buys it from your kids or your grandkids, or they make a one error because you're always one decision away from filing for bankruptcy. That's not legacy. Legacy is the impact that you truly leave on people because that's the only thing that that flows. And, you know, here's legacies. What do you want your spouse, your husband, your wife? What do you want your child? What do you want your aunts or uncles or nieces and nephews? What would you want your coworkers to say at your funeral? How would they describe you? What kind of father were you? What kind of mother were you? What kind of friend were you? What kind of person were you? How would you want to be described? Because if I know tomorrow is not guaranteed, that's just something that's your legacy. I talk about, unconditional love. And, a year after I filed for bankruptcy, um, my wife, in 29 years we were married, there's one thing we've never agreed on. Um, and that is when it came time to prosecute, my wife wanted to put the bad actors behind bars for a long time. The FBI and law enforcement had, everything they needed to put them behind bars for a long time. And I could not press charges because for me, I was saying, it's like, if God used them to bring me closer to him, why would I want to hurt them? And that was how I saw the world. I do believe in Judgment Day. And I told my wife that. I says, look, every single one of us has to answer for our actions. I'm not here to judge. I know they gave me a gift. Even though they meant to hurt me, I'm trusting God to take care of what he needs to take care of. And a year later, I saw him at the airport and I gave him a hug. My wife didn't talk to me the whole flight back. And but but the analogy I want to give about forgiveness and unconditional love, because they really truly go hand in hand. Doc, you're engaged, and I want your audience to think about this as well. If you know your wife loves, let's just say, lobster. I use the example of lobster because most people know that's something special usually. And if your fiance loves lobster, and you search all of Manhattan, but there's no lobster. You got to go to New Jersey. Atlantic City is the only place you could find it. You drive 2 hours. You're on the phone with Gordon Ramsay. He's walking you through the best recipe. You're bright to be. Your fiance comes home. It's like, baby, oh my God, the most amazing dinner, candlelight, just prepared. It's just perfect. The ambience, the music. You had worked so hard to make this day so special. And she's like, baby, oh my God, I love you. And she gets a phone call. She's like, Doc, Jamal, I'll be right with you. And she steps in the room and you hear her laughing and joking and telling stories, and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And an hour goes by and 90 minutes go by and candles turn off. All the food gets cold and noise stop. And you walk into the room and she's sleeping on the couch. What's the likelihood you're going to go out of your way another time and go out and do this lobster dinner again? And for me, legacy is, what if there was that angel and says, Doc, before you make that decision, let me show you a little preview of what your girl was going through. There was this kid that wanted to commit suicide, and she poured every ounce of her life, every ounce of her energy, of her spirit into this kid, trying to save him, telling stories, laughing, making him laugh and joke, to the point where she crashed. She had none left for herself. Would you still really not want to make that lobster dinner?
Changes everything.
And for me, that's what legacy is. What kind of man, what kind of woman, what kind of impact do you really want to leave on others? So when that day comes, what are they really saying about you?
Such a powerful, powerful way to be. And I know one aspect of your legacy is you're doing some beautiful work right now to do what you can to end children's sex trafficking. Would you
Yes.
please, share with us not only what you're doing, but how can people get involved? How can they help and what's going on?
I love you for that question. So that is my calling. That's what God has put in my heart, is to connect with the Gen Alpha and Gen Z that are lost, to introduce them, in a way back to Christ from 2,000 years ago. Today there's over 2,000 denominations of Christianity, and it gets confused and it gets overwhelming, and who's right, who's wrong. What if I could introduce them to Christ in the purest, most beautiful transform, to become the best version of themselves, to be because those are going to be our future leaders, our future presidents and congresswomen and men and senators that are going to make an impact on the world. What if they have that goodness in their heart? What if they have the spirit that the impossible becomes possible? We could do whatever we set our hearts to do. And one of the things that brings me a lot of pain, and one of my dearest uh, friends who I truly look up to is Tim Tebow, and what Tim Tebow is doing, on the scale of bringing a level of awareness to sex trafficking. Nothing is happening in Washington, D.C. And that's really sad to see that, and most people don't know this, but here's statistics I'll share with your audience. 70% of all child pedophiles, for lack of a better word, the customers, the ones paying for sex with these children, are U.S. citizens. The United States accounts for less than 5% of the world population, yet we account for 70% of sex trafficking. There's a lot of people leaving this country doing the unthinkable, the most horrific acts, and coming back into the States, and then nothing is being done. And there's technology today available to us to be able to flip switches and with facial recognition to have every airport, every municipality, every traffic light looking for those pedophiles or looking for these children. But everyone is afraid of, protecting or invading on our privacy. Well, there's technology that protects privacy because it data dumps. It doesn't retain any data of anyone. It's only looking for specific pedophiles that we're able to find. So to bring that level of awareness, what God has put on my heart is a march on Washington, D.C. We united with many of the churches, many organizations, sports organizations, leaders from all backgrounds in faith, businessmen and women, and said, can we bring a level of awareness? So we got preliminary numbers of upward 2 million, upward 10 million, from 2 to 10 million people that were going to participate on the march in Washington, D.C. We will plan it to be March of 2026. We'll have to push it to 2027 because Washington, D.C. said the largest gathering ever in the history of Washington, D.C. dates back in the 60s to Martin Luther King. And there's estimates anywhere between 125 upward 250,000 people participated. So when we were talking numbers of 2 million to 10 billion, it's like, you'll cripple us. But we thought, well, what if it's no longer on Washington, D.C.? We still call it March 4th. So we're at March 4th, 2027, to bring a level of awareness. But now we're doing it at municipalities level, like every city, every village, every borough, county level, state level. And when we're talking about that, God says the impossible is possible. What if we created into a World Awareness Day? And here's what I would tell you, audience, here's what I would tell you. Two things that come to my mind, that where I believe humanity would unite. We will all put our religious belief, our background, or upbringing aside. If there's a meteor hurling towards planet Earth, I could see everyone putting our differences aside because we have a common enemy. Would you agree with that? And us uniting as a world population, let's fight this common enemy. And the second is what I truly believe is fighting for our kids. I think anyone will put their difference aside when they see the innocent children and the harm that's being happening to them. Says, I'm going to put my religious belief, I'm going to put my upbringing belief. We're going to do everything that we can to protect these kids. So we're thinking now we're working on March 4th being a day of awareness day, bringing a level of awareness to child sex trafficking from around the world. So anytime a child is abducted, we're able to flip on technology. And we're going to be, inviting people that want to bring technology, not for profit, but technology to really bring a level of awareness, level of education, a level of unity, and uniting humanity. One day a year, let's just all put our differences aside, and let's just unite as humanity, a day of love, a day of compassion, a day of awareness, a day of making a difference. Even if it's just one day, to be able to make a difference in people's lives, let's just be part of it. And then as a result, of course, we're going to be working with the Tebow Foundation to build all these homes and foster homes and giving care. And when these kids get rescued, they got a place to go and hope, and people that will be able to give them therapy and resources, and people that believe in them, people that love on them. And if we could create that, I just feel like that is what God has put on my heart, and that's what He wants me to lead. So we're going to be looking for a whole lot of volunteers. As a matter of fact, I'm home right now writing my book. Hopefully, I'll get to finish it right now. That's my closing chapter of 12 chapters. I close with what God has put on my heart. So your audience, ironically, is really truly the first audience to hear the full scope of what we're working on with specific dates. So I feel fortunate that I have the privilege to share this with you, Doctor, and with everyone listening in. And you know what? Together, we will make a difference. Together, we can make an impact. Together, we can live a life purpose. And even if it's just one day a year, let's just unite together on that day, and as a humanity, and bring that level of love and joy and peace and fulfillment, and most importantly, that legacy that you talked about.
So, so beautiful. And just immense acknowledgement to your heart, your level of love, your level of care. And this is something that everyone listening, you have within you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
view somebody, we view their actions, we view how they show up, and we either pedestalize or whatever we want to call it, but we make the assumption, oh, that person's amazing for this reason. I wish I could be like that.
Yes.
And I have a distinction I share with people. Admiration is projection. That which you admire in another, you can only recognize it because it already exists within you. And that person might be embodying it more. They might have practiced it more.
Yep.
But the fact that you can recognize it means it's within you. Now it's just, do you want to practice stepping into it more? And
Amen.
with what you just shared as a closing question as we wrap up, is there any message on your heart that you want to share with our listeners? If this was the last time they would hear from you, is there anything you want to make sure you would leave them with?
Um, yes. You know what? If it's okay with you, I would love to close in a prayer. And that would be my farewell message to everyone listening in. Is that okay?
That's good.
Lord Jesus Christ, we come before you with open hearts, Lord. Um, it's no coincidence that the person listening to this message, that you're speaking directly to them. So say, Lord, thank you. Thank you for trusting me with Dr. Jamil. Thank you for trusting me with his audience. Thank you for trusting me with this special soul that I'm speaking to right now. Lord, I know, and you know what they're going through, what life challenges, the weight they weighed heavy on their heart, the confusion, um, looking for clarity, looking for purpose. Lord, I ask that you speak to them right now. You speak to their hearts. You speak directly to their souls, Lord. I ask that they feel your presence in a way that they never experienced before. I ask that you breathe your goodness and your mercy and your love and your compassion to every fiber of their being. Lord, let them know just how truly special they are to you, that they were created in your image, regardless of their relief or regardless of their background. You didn't say you were created in their image only if they were Christians. You created each and every single one of us unique with a purpose in your image that just always shows love and mercy and grace. So, Lord, today before you, as they listen to this, let them hear your voice. Let them feel your presence. Let them feel your love in a way they've never done before. Thank you again, Lord, for trusting me with this incredible group of men and women. And Lord, I ask that you honor them, you fulfill their dreams, you fulfill their passions, you speak life into them in ways they have never experienced in the past. And I pray this in your mighty name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. That was beautiful. I feel your heart. Thank you. And
Love you.
I love
You're
you.
beautiful. I love you so much. So grateful for you. Thank you for being a gift. Thank you for being a light. Thank you for following what God has put in your heart, Doc. A lot of people would have probably talked themselves out and questioned if they have what it takes. But thank you for being obedient, because I know you've impacted my life just as much as I know you impacted your audience's life. So thank you for being that beautiful, pure gift that I've come to know. You're truly a blessing.
Thank you so much. I love and appreciate you immensely. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today, for sharing your heart, your wisdom, your life experience, your knowledge. I am sure that everyone listening has been moved as a result of this conversation. And so first of all, for our audience, thank you so much for being with us today. Your presence means the world. And I know that your time, your energy, your attention, these are your most valuable resources. And you spent the hour and a half or so, hour 45 with us. And I don't take that lightly. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, it would mean a lot if you could share this. If there's somebody in your world that you believe they'd really benefit from hearing this message, please share it with them. It doesn't take much, and they can, just like that smile could have saved that person's life, hearing this conversation could potentially save somebody's life. Second, if you can leave a review, like it, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're checking this out, goes a long way, helps more people find the show. And in closing, I call this podcast Transformation Starts Today because I have found that most people's favorite day to change their life is tomorrow. And that's why they stay stuck. But you could be different. You could apply everything that Adele and I spoke about today and begin shifting your life right now, not later. All my love to you and your families. I wish you the best, and I look forward to the next time we connect.
Amen. Love you guys. Love you.
Thank you for being with us today. If this conversation served you, it would mean a lot if you left a review and shared this with anyone who may benefit. An extraordinary life without regret is available to you now. Choose it. It's your time.